What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV, special TGIF edition. Every week we have these. It's great. Make sure you go and subscribe for the newsletter. Get some free PDFs, downloads. Go to coinmastery.com/invest. Today we're talking a little bit about Bitcoin and its juggernaut level terminator status. We're talking about Bitcoin Cash, among other things. We're going to talk a little about Segwit2x futures and really the next installment in this fork thing that's happening. Briefly talk about some ICO releases and the overall state of ICOs. And then I want to talk about what's happening with altcoins, talk about a couple random tweets that happened, and then I want to end with something I think you guys will find really helpful as it relates to the community and also as it relates to just really interesting advice. One thing I will say also is if there's obviously a lot of people that have been emailing me about the Palm Beach Tika webinar. If you have any questions, you can email me, carter@coinmastery.com, just because there's not a whole lot of places to discuss that. So very exciting stuff. Let's get into it. Bitcoin is having a hell of a run. So the first thing, I switched over to Bitstamp. Someone had a great comment where Bitstamp actually has a much longer history than Coinbase. So I'm probably going to be using Bitstamp moving forward because all the prices end up being pretty similar anyway. And what you can see here is that I've got the 2017 trend line, which I think paints a really nice picture when you're looking at the dailies, especially when we're looking at the extensions, which I'm going to show you in a minute, which I fully understand this may not be exactly right, but I think that it's helpful just to get the picture and so you can do your own research on that. Drew the top trend line, bottom trend line. These aren't trend lines, channel lines, I should say. And I chose to do these off of the wicks, not necessarily the candles this time. At least on the bottom, on the top, it's a little bit closer, so it's not as big of a deal. But what you can see is on the daily, even if this line was pulled down a little bit, depending on where it lined up down here, you can see that we had a pretty solid breakthrough. Let me move this, the auto, turn that off for a second. We had a good breakthrough through that top line, meaning all signs are pointing this thing continuing to go up, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's such is life, right? That's the nature of this beast. Now, what you can also see, which is this big extension thing going up, is a projection. Now, let me be perfectly clear here before the technical analysis people just light me up. This is just because I took a few tutorials and this is what it looked like the best to do. And I saw some other people who tried this and I could mirror their results by doing it myself. Whether or not this is exactly right, I cannot confidently tell you, but this will at least get you to go Google Fibonacci extension so that you can learn how to do this yourself. This is what I'm trying to do too. So please don't take this as exact numbers. This is just a way to gauge where things might be going. It's also really important to note that as far as I can tell with the research, statistically speaking, these extension levels don't have a very high hit rate, meaning the research I read, and I'd love to be proved wrong on this, show that these extension levels are not always, there's no reason to necessarily believe these as hard levels the way a Fibonacci retracement often works better. So this is more about a way of just wrapping your head around what levels, what areas to focus on if you are going to do some sort of technical analysis along channel lines or trend lines or ascending wedges or whatever, okay? So the way I did this is I drew the trend from the 3,000 up to the 6170 run, and then you do the the trend down, the previous pullback right here in this little area down to, what's that, 5,400 give or take. Now I'm moving it over here just to get the lines a little bit longer because so it's easier to see. And you can see theoretically, if this was an extension, you could see what the projections would be. And if you go down to, let's say, a 4 hour, oh God, just messed that up. Did I? No, I didn't. Make sure that this is, yeah, that's good. If you go down to a 4 hour, you can see that it could give you an idea of where things might hit. So you can see that it bounced off of this 78 extension line at 751 and it came back. And so you can look at these lines as a general guideline on where things may hit, where you may see some support, where you may see some resistance. And you can also see that these are not perfect, but it does add another piece of data for you. So I'm always trying to add new tools to my tool chest in the technical analysis. I also know that I am not going to become the best technical person. So I like to do this stuff to get an idea, and then I like to go and verify it with people that are much better at technical analysis than I am, many of which you can find on Twitter. Just go to my twitter.com/Carter Thomas. Look for the people I follow. Half of them, or a percentage of them, put up charts. Sometimes you'll see some extension levels in there. If you don't see it on there, just go on YouTube and you can find people that talk about this sort of thing. But there's a million different ways you can do it. I just find that the more I try, the better I get. So what this is saying is that theoretically, right around 8,100 is the next big resistance level, theoretically speaking. So if we keep this run going, I mean, we're at 73.43 right now on Bitstamp. If we blow through this 7,500, the next one might be in the 8,100 range based on this chart, right? Now, if we can't break through that and we keep coming back down, we start to see a little bit of a downtrend, that may be a different story. But that's what it's looking like with Bitcoin. I think that I'm always reminded of, right, Occam's razor is a theory that states all things being equal, the simplest explanation is usually the right one. And it's a theory. It's not necessarily a fact. And that's the way I often try to look at markets, is that what would be the simplest explanation for this? And often that tends to be the right one. And in this situation, the most common or logical explanation for this price rise for somebody who's in crypto, who's been studying this stuff, is the fork. People are trying to buy Bitcoin, BTC, to get that free Segwit2x moving into the middle of November. There's a million other theories, but that one seems to be the consensus one. And often those tend to be right. Not always, but in these kind of markets they do. So I think the other thing that I always think that I'm thinking about a lot of is Rocky, Crypto Hustle. You guys may know him if you're in Chris Dunn's course. He posted once about how it's not parabolic until you can't believe it's happening. And that plays into the idea that we've talked about before, where it always goes higher than you think you could ever go, and it always goes lower than you ever think it can go. Doesn't matter what the time frame is. That's typically how volatile and parabolic markets work. And so I'm looking at this. I'm looking at 73.40, and while this is extraordinarily high, especially when you zoom out and you look at the, where we've been and how we're accelerating, it's not frenzy level yet. It's not people like, holy, this is insane, right? The way I remember Ethereum in May, being in my house, just like refreshing it and watching the thing just going up 5, 10, 20% in hours. That's the kind of level that when you're like, holy cow. And we're getting there, but I don't think it's quite kicked in yet. I think it will. And so that's what I'm looking at. So just some new perspectives. People have been asking, hey, you still like this 4,900? I do, because this whole run is just, yeah, I do. I'll just leave it at that. That's what I'm sticking to. That's my guns. Until I have a really good, until the fork happens, I'm not going to really, I don't see a reason to change my buy levels anytime soon, right around the 5,000 level. Now, Bitcoin Cash, as actually, I think we talked about this yesterday. This is the one, probably the only altcoin I've been watching. I own a fair amount of Bitcoin Cash, and it's continuing to rise. And I think that this is continuing to rise because there's so much uncertainty in the Bitcoin market, and Bitcoin Cash is going through a fork. Now, the difference between Bitcoin Cash, as far as I understand, is that it's more like the Ethereum hard fork than the Bitcoin hard fork. It's not necessarily a chain split. It's just an upgrade to the protocol for a variety of things. But Bitcoin Cash and the way that it relates to hash power, the miners, now it's not necessarily Bitcoin Cash against Bitcoin BTC. It's Bitcoin Cash against BTC against Segwit2x. And that infighting, Bitcoin Cash is starting to get a lot of attention, a lot of hedge, because it's kind of a constant at this point. It's in terms of the Bitcoin chain, it has more stability, crazy, so to speak, than BTC or Segwit2x. So I'm going to keep watching this. I mean, I told you guys I own plenty of this. Is it a buy right now? I don't know. I think everything up until November 16th is you're rolling the dice one way or another. Unless you have a very good swing trade lined up, it's your call. It's a 50-50, but there's nothing that I'm necessarily doing unless I see blood somewhere. That also gets us into Segwit2x futures, which, if you don't know what this means, it's people betting on what the price is going to be in the future. And, $1 million worth of volume a day. Some would say that's a lot. Some would say that's not. Who knows? It's trading on Hit BTC. It was trading on Bitfinex, but I guess maybe it's listed differently. But this is complete speculation. I mean, this is like an IOU. It doesn't really exist, but it can give you a proxy on how much is being baked into the BTC price. So the higher the Segwit2x futures go, often the higher the Bitcoin price is going to go. That's not one-to-one, but that's the loose theory behind it. I'm not touching this stuff for a million reasons. And as it relates to Bitcoin and trying to play that, probably next week this may change, but as of now, my plan is, I've got 70% of my stuff just stockpiled. It just continues to be stockpiled, and I don't touch that. And the Bitcoin I do have, I will probably sell that as we get closer to the 8,000 level, if we even do, like a few days before the hard fork. I'm not going to try to play the hour before or anything like that. I think that's all going to be priced in some way. And so I would rather wait to see what happens and then make a play based on the fallout than try to predict what will happen. I know myself. I know that I have a lower win percentage when I try to predict stuff, and I have a much higher percentage when I plan and react to what the market does. So the more I can have a higher batting average, the better. And so I'm looking at this hard fork as a hopefully as a complete bloodbath that I can just dive into, or whatever you want to call it. One interesting thing I noticed, someone tweeted about this yesterday, I think, and I couldn't find the tweet, but Token Data, it's a great site, tokendata.io, you should check it out. Something like 70 ICOs listed on November 1st. And I might not be getting the exact number right. I'm going to try to find that tweet and see if I can verify it, but I think it was in these guys' newsletter, which I'm on. I should check that newsletter. And that to me is wild. It seems, I shouldn't say it seems like, the ICO world is still so active, And yet, even when things seem to be going down, when probabilities of doing well on an ICO, or the surrounding economics and politics even of an ICO and the regulatory concerns of an ICO, but there's still so many coming out. There's still so many trying to raise money. And you can always go on something like CoinMarketCap here. And a good way to see this, if you go to recently added on trending, you can see some of the recent ICOs. After they close, they will get submitted to CoinMarketCap and get listed. And that's often a proxy that, like a week or two after the ICO happens, they might get listed here. But I always forget, it's still a huge business. It's still a huge market. It is not one that I necessarily play in because, like I said, predicting things to happen it tends to be a much lower percentage. Reacting to market conditions is however a much higher percentage. It's kind of like some people are venture capital investors. They do research. They can predict what's going to happen. And if you're good at that, ICOs and all this, maybe that's your thing. More of a hedge fund model is wait to see what happens, have a plan, and react to it as much as you can and let the market do the work. I have found that I'm better at that than I am at the venture capital, at least in the short term. And so that's why, but this just blew my mind. And I think the reason why this matters to you is because what happens in our own ecosystem, what happens in our own world, in our own portfolio is often different than what's happening in the greater crypto world. That's why going to conferences can be so helpful, because you see so much of what you don't see on a daily basis. You learn about all the energy, all the fire, everything that's going down. And this is just a really interesting kind of, oh my gosh, everything is still screaming ahead. And especially you scroll back and, we're at a $200 billion market cap. And where did that come from? Obviously we know where it came from, but rhetorically speaking here. And so this is an interesting dynamic. You got Bitcoin screaming up with the whole hard fork thing. You've got Ethereum trickling down. You've got ICOs coming out left and right, and then you have altcoins really suffering. But the overall amount of money just keeps rising. That to me is a very, very fragile but exciting moment in crypto. And I think this hard fork is going to open up opportunities for a lot of people in ways that we're not really thinking about yet. And there's nothing really to think about yet because we're not even close to it yet. Which brings up this idea, or this, what do you call it? How altcoin prices go up. So the big conversation that's happening, at least the one that I'm seeing, is most people bought Bitcoin at some point, maybe Ethereum. And then over the course of the last few months, or maybe the last month, or whenever you joined crypto, or last couple of years, whatever, you moved your crypto into altcoins because Bitcoin was like 5%, 10%, maybe 50% a month. Altcoins are 5,000% a month or whatever. And so you start moving it in, and now it is what it is. Loosely speaking, right? And I think the one thing that can get people into trouble is when you go back and you look at this. I'm going to take this Fibonacci thing down. There is a misnomer of the correlation between Bitcoin price and altcoin prices, in the sense that there is a kind of running theory that as Bitcoin goes up, altcoins go down, and vice versa. As Bitcoin goes down, altcoins will go up. And there is a lot of people on Twitter who talk about how, the alts are going to explode after Segwit2x. And that may be true. I actually think if Bitcoin drops a lot, alts will do really well in the short term, the same way they did with Bitcoin Gold, same way they did with Bitcoin Cash. Like, that will happen. But the difference is you always got to remember, where's the cash coming from? And so for altcoins to really have a resurgence, to come back to to levels and the returns that you want or expect, you need two things, one of two things, or hopefully both. The first is that you need more people, or we need more people that come in, that buy Bitcoin, that build their Bitcoin foundation, and then they start to buy altcoins. And I don't say that in terms of like, hey, we need people to come in here so that we get rich and they get screwed. That's not what I mean at all. I mean that for the ecosystem to survive and for everybody for it to grow, that's the way it needs to work, the first way. The second way is a longer term but more sustainable model, which is some of these altcoins need to actually start producing money. They need to become real businesses. You can talk about blockchain, you can talk about the tech, you can talk about how revolutionary it is, all you want. But the fact of the matter is, no funds, nobody with a lot of money is going to put anything in there in a sizable way across the board until they see that as a real company with a real investment. And that is the truth of the matter. These funds will not speculate as much as individual people will. Kind of like that survey I did the other day on Twitter. And there's a million reasons for that. But you get some of these altcoins, like whether it be Neo or whether it be OMG or whether it be whatever altcoins you have, if they actually start to bring in real money, people are like companies and customers are paying money to use that service or product or whatever it may be, that's when funds will start to dump money into it on the exchange, not just OTC, which doesn't move the price, that just moves the ownership. That will move altcoin prices up. And like I said, with Bitcoin drops, you might get a short-term pop, but that's not a real sustainable thing. So you always got to be thinking about that. When you're looking at your portfolio, when you're looking at altcoins and you're thinking to yourself, man, should I hold this? Should I sell this? I mean, let's get away from Bitcoin and cash for a second, because a majority of these every day, is it going down? Is it going up? Is it going down? That's what you need to ask yourself. Are either of these two things happening? I mean, maybe it'll happen in the future with the coins you own, but you got to be very, very dialed and have a very strong foundation of vision or belief or whatever you want to call it, so that you can hang while this all happens. And that's why, like, every day people are like, oh, this is such a good price. Oh, this is such a good price. Oh, and I'm looking at this being like, the price doesn't really matter. This is what matters. When I see 50,000 people signing up a day on Coinbase, that matters. When I see guys like Mike Novogratz bringing in $100 billion pension funds and then buying altcoins, that matters. But the price against Bitcoin only matters if that Bitcoin money goes into altcoins. And I think some will, but you just need more of it. We need more money in the system, which I believe is a good segue into, well, I guess I'll start with Nassim's tweet. I thought this was great. Let me first say, Nassim Taleb, brilliant guy, very unique views, almost like libertarian, but like very, very specific. And so please don't take this as any sort of endorsement or political statement. But I thought this was great, where he talks about how having skin in the game is actually no man's land. And if you don't have skin in the game, you typically like kind of have a victim mentality, or like, hey, people should appreciate me or whatever. But the big way to put the big winners, or like the big risk, or the big way to move things, create change, is when you have skin in the game of others, or soul in the game. Meaning, it's one thing for you to have money in Bitcoin, but it's another thing if you go and get all of your friends and family to go buy Bitcoin, because now you are on the hook for them. Because no matter how you play it, they are going to come to you. They're going to look to you, and they're going to be like, hey, why is it going down? What's the problem? Blah, blah, blah. And that's the real game here. right? That's why guys like, I think Mike Novogratz are very inspirational for someone like me, because I see him as taking on that. And from the outside, it might look like you're an opportunist, but in reality, I think it's you're showing that you actually believe in it, because you're bringing in new people and you are taking the skin in the game to the next level. You're taking responsibility, even if people say they'll never hold you responsible, they will. It's what always happens, and that's one of the biggest reasons why people do not get their friends and family to go buy Bitcoin. And that's, it is what it is. But that's also why I am so focused on that thing. That's why I promote products. That's why I give away free courses. That's why I always push people into my email newsletter, because I'll give them a ton of value, but it's going to get more people in the game. And I'm happy to do that because I do believe in all of this, right? I want this thing to go huge. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because there is a coin mastery. There's a lot of people that have emailed me about this, and I don't want to leave anyone out, but this was just an awesome story where Derek emailed me a week ago or whatever. And he said that he really wants to get people involved. He wants to help. He wants to do stuff. And so he was going to go do a talk in Alabama, I believe. And he emailed me and said, hey, what do you think I should say? How do I get people to go buy it? Because what I can tell you is that there are 50,000 people a day going through Coinbase. I can tell you that the number of people that actually buy Bitcoin is a fraction of that. The number of people that I put, my Coinbase link in front of, it's in the tens of thousands, if not like close to the 100,000s at this point. The number of people that actually sign up is tiny. So there's a conversion problem. There's some sort of belief system that breaks. People do not have the thing that's convincing them that they should put $100 into Bitcoin. And so he emailed me asking me, hey, what should I say? And I wrote back, and I'm putting this up here because I want, if anybody's interested, please use this information, right? So real quick, number one, just these are things that you can tell people that help. Just go buy $100. Number two, just go look at the Bitcoin obituaries, which is like every time Bitcoin has been declared dead by the media, it's this running list online, and ask someone to explain why this is continuing to go for 7 years and nothing can kill it. There's a limited supply of Bitcoin, and for a logical left brain crowd, they understand, wow, there's only 21 million, right? It's like a revolution to banks and governments. Tell a few stories about missed opportunities. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I'm here is because I've missed a lot of opportunities with investing in previous years. And then the last is like fully accept that it might be a scam, but the pitch is, but what if it's not, right? This may be a huge bubble or scam or whatever people want to say, but if you address that and say, okay, but what if it's not? How can you afford not to take a chance? And so I emailed Derek that, and then he wrote back on the 1st. He wrote, I just finished in Birmingham. It went great. We gave away 500 in Bitcoin. People who signed up for a Coinbase account. 65% of people actually signed up. So think about how powerful being in person and having these conversations is to actually get people to sign up versus, oh, I see some link on some website from some dude I saw on YouTube. Being in real life makes a huge difference. That's why when you talk to your friends and family over the coming weeks and Thanksgiving and Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever your thing is, being in person, sitting them down, walking them through it, huge conversion rate. Ruben at Zcoin. So Derek is a Zcoin fan. I'm a Zcoin fan. So they hooked it up, which you could do. You could email any coin and say, hey, here's what I want to do. Can you give us some coins to give away? And most coins would probably do it. I thought your points were dumbed down, but I don't think I dumbed it down enough, right? So those things I just posted, to most of you, many of you, you may see this and be like, yeah, obviously, dude. Same thing on like Palm Beach Confidential. You're like, oh my God, this is so boring and intro level. But when you actually talk to people who don't know anything about crypto and are skeptical, it needs to be that boring and dumb or whatever. And I'm not saying that in like a condescending way. I'm saying like that is, if I was just getting started, that's what I would need too. I wouldn't know what the hell mining was and all this. And people left energized and intrigued. Thanks for ideas. Anyway, so I just want to give a shout out to Derek. And I also really want to reiterate, there's a lot of people that have emailed me and have said, hey, I've talked to my friends and family. I've done this, and I want people to sign up. And I think what I would encourage everybody to go out and hopefully over the next week or 2 weeks is make that a thing. Not only have your own money in the business or in the game, how can you get other people? How can you get your skin in their game? Because that is when things really start to steamroll, and it also makes us as a collective crypto unit much more powerful to bring in new people. And that is, you shouldn't think of that as some sort of giant Ponzi scheme. You should think about that as like you're bringing in people into the early phases of something that's going to go huge. It will go huge eventually, and it's going to be on TV, and it's going to be hype like you've never seen in your life. And now is a chance to bring in people you care about early and potentially change their lives. And whatever you need to do to make that happen, that is the goal. Like, you got to be ethical, you got to be legal, you got to whatever, but getting more people to overcome that barrier, that hurdle, that mental block, it's whatever it takes. I'm telling you, that's just like, that is a very, very important part of this business. That's why I do these channels. That's why I have this channel, is because this is something big, and this is the way I can do it, have an impact, and this is how I can reach you guys to hope that you go out and do an impact like many of you already are, which is a big reason. I think that the final thing that I want to leave you with, and I'll link to this because I think that this speech by a guy named David Foster Wallace, he gave a talk at Kenyon College, I don't know, maybe in 2006 or something. And it's one of the most amazing speeches I've ever heard. David Foster Wallace, American author, brilliant guy, like really tragic. He ended up killing himself, which is super sad, but just unbelievable speech. And he gave this speech, and the entire thing is all about how can you put yourself into other people's shoes, and more importantly, how can you remove your lens of what you believe to be true so that you can see what actually is happening in front of you. And I think this is really timely because I look at a presentation like the Palm Beach Confidential one, and what I see is 200,000 people watching a presentation, and let's say 30,000 or I don't know, 10,000 people decide to join in or buy the program, but 190,000 people just learned about Bitcoin and they got excited about Bitcoin. And maybe 30% of people were like, this is bullshit, I hate it, whatever. But realize, like, I don't see that. I see an opportunity to grow crypto. And I completely understand the other side of it. When you see certain marketing techniques, when you see certain messages, when you see certain things that rub you the wrong way, that make you have a visceral reaction to it, that shuts down the ability to see what may be the bigger truth of the matter. And I'm not here to pick a fight with anyone, or defend myself. Like, I'm glad I did it, and I would do it again. Because if we really want to grow crypto, we need to get more people into crypto. And unless every one of us is going to go out and do individual presentations, which many we will, we need more people to join. We need more people to be a part of this community. And this speech, and I read it right after college, this has always been a huge part of how I try to see the world and how I try to see finance. It's a little bit about empathy, but what it's more about is observing what's really happening beyond how you feel about it. what is actually going on without any judgments, without any skepticism, without any optimism, cynicism, anything. Just what is happening and what are the different stories that could come from that. And what I want to do is I just want to read this one paragraph, especially for the podcast listeners, then we'll wrap it up because I think that this is really poignant. And then I'll link to this because I would definitely encourage you guys to go read it. Here's another didactic little story. There are these two guys sitting together in a bar in the remote Alaskan wilderness. One of these guys is religious and the other is an atheist. And the two are arguing about the existence of God and that special intensity that comes after about the fourth beer. And the atheist says, look, it's not that I don't have actual reasons for not believing in God. It's not like I haven't ever experimented with the whole God and prayer thing. And just last month, I got caught away from the camp in the terrible blizzard, and I was totally lost, and I couldn't see a thing. And it was 50 below. And so I tried it. I fell to my knees in the snow and cried out, oh God, if there is a God, I'm lost in this blizzard, and I'm going to die if you don't help me. And now, in the bar, the religious guy looks at the atheist, all puzzled, and says, well, you must believe in it now, he says. After all, here you are, alive. And the atheist rolls his eyes. No, man, all that was a couple Eskimos happened to come wandering by and showed me my way back to camp. I love this story because two people can see the exact same thing and have a completely different perception of it. And in finance and in crypto, that is what will ruin you. You have to learn to be objective, emotionless. You make your judgments, you can make your decisions, but do it based on objective facts, not based on how you feel. And the more you can implement that, the better you will do in crypto, the more money you will make, the better decisions you will make. I think that this speech is a brilliant and beautiful way to describe that. So I'm going to link it to you guys. And with that, I'm going to sign off for the week. It's been great as always, and I will see you guys on Monday. Peace out.